So you're seeing like the comic book image, the romanticized, idealized, like charismatic supervillain. And then when you see, like, it goes back to just regular film that you're watching, you're seeing Arthur Fleck, and you're seeing this disturbed individual, knowing everything that you know about him, and knowing that he's just this, like, really sick, pathetic individual who's completely immersed in self-pity.
Bingo.
There's nothing charismatic or romantic about him. He's just a really sick person who's doing this murder, and then you get those little TV shots, and there's Joker, there's the supervillain, there's the revolutionary hero, or there's your mob idol that you have, if you or the serial killer that you read all the books about. It's like there's the idealized image of him that you're coming to see the movie for. Like you're coming to see the Joker. You're coming to see this comic book character
as a finished product.
And what you get is the reality beneath that.
Yes.
That false image, that surface thin, like grandiose supervillain, and then strip all that down, and what you get is just this wretched human being.
Yeah.
And so that's like it's really affecting. Like it's an emotional experience watching this movie. And well, that's one of the reasons I actually, like, even if there were awkward bits, I actually really enjoyed watching this movie. Well, but then again, that's just me. Like, not everyone will enjoy watching this movie.
How about this, Harrison? How about, and I know this was an area that we wanted to discuss here today a little bit. It's concerning what good art is. Mm-hmm. And good art, hopefully, reflect something about our culture, something about our psychology, something about our inner life, something about reality in an intrinsic sense that is true. That's what good art is, and perhaps packaged up in this Joker story is actually, for once. Well, maybe not for once. There are some good movies out there, but certainly approaching this story in a truly artful way. Yeah. You've not only gotten a new angle on the Joker character, but you've gotten a new angle on us, on where we are today. Yeah. I mean, this movie it's reverberating. There are so many kind of echoes and reverberations in how people are responding to it, and how the movie is commenting on exactly how people would be commenting on it. It's just it's a kind of a mirror to where we are today, and how we're entertained and how we're not entertained, and what the purpose of good art is, which is not always to be entertaining in the kind of hero's journey sense, as you mentioned earlier, Harrison, which we've seen done to death, and all too often two-dimensionally. So now we have, as you said, this anti-hero journey, which is done on a completely 3D level and in a very uncomfortable way. So. What can we say about this movie as a I don't want to call it a work of art, but as an attempt at art, in as much as a pop culture movie can be art?
Well, I want to read a couple things because I'll just say I think it is art. I would call this movie art, but I'll explain a bit what I mean by that by reading a couple excerpts from. This book. This is The Principles of Art by Robin Collingwood. We've talked about Collingwood before on the show several times. He's one of my favorite writers and philosophers. So he wrote this entire book on what art is and what art isn't. So I just want to read a couple things from it. One, at the end, he's talking about, this is in the conclusion, he's talking about kind of how, and at the time he was writing it, 1938, the way he saw it, literature was kind of dying, like the novel was kind of dying around this time. So he's kind of giving, in this first excerpt, a kind of what he thinks might be done about that. So he says, in the case of literature, the only way which I can see of establishing such contact, this is contact with the audience, is for authors to give up the idea of pure literature, or literature whose interest depends not on its subject matter, but solely on its technical qualities, and write on subjects which people want to read. This does not mean turning away from art proper to amusement or magic, for the kind of subjects about which I am thinking does not consist of subjects chosen for their power of arousing emotion, whether for discharge in the reading itself or for discharge in the affairs of real life. They are subjects about which people already have emotions, but obscure and confused ones. And in wanting to read about these subjects, they are wanting to raise these emotions to the level of consciousness, to become imaginatively aware of them. So there's actually a lot in that short excerpt relating to his whole argument throughout the book on, what is amusement and what is magic and the purpose of art. So right here he talks about art being like that which raises these obscure emotions that we have, these unexamined, unrealized, specified emotions to the surface, to the surface of consciousness, and thereby becoming aware of them. He says that's actually should be the true purpose of art. So then he gives an example in his time, of kind of what he considers art. So he brings up the example that he gives is T.S. Eliot's *The Wasteland*, the poem that he wrote. And so right at the end, I want to read the second excerpt. This is about the wasteland, and I think it also applies to Joker and kind of similar forms of art. You'll see why as I read it. So he says, the poem depicts a world where the wholesome flowing water of emotion, which alone fertilizes all human activity, has dried up. Passions that once ran so strongly as to threaten the defeat of prudence, the destruction of human individuality, the wreck of men's little ships, are shrunk to nothing. No one gives. No one will risk himself by sympathizing. No one has anything to control. We are imprisoned in ourselves, becalmed in a windless selfishness. The only emotion left is fear, fear of emotion itself, fear of death by drowning in it, fear in a handful of dust. This poem is not in the least amusing, nor is it in the least magical. The reader who expects it to be satire or an entertaining description of vices is as disappointed with it as the reader who expects it to be propaganda or an exhortation to get up and do something. To the annoyance of both parties, it contains no indictments and no proposals. To the amateurs of literature, brought up on the idea of poetry as a genteel amusement, the thing is an affront. To the little neo-Kiplings who think of poetry as an incitement to political virtue, it is even worse, for it describes an evil where no one and nothing is to blame, an evil not curable by shooting capitalists or destroying a social system, a disease which has so eaten into civilization that political remedies are about as useful as poulticing a cancer. To readers who want not amusement or magic, but poetry, and who want to know what poetry can be, if it is to be neither of these things, The Wasteland supplies an answer. And by reflecting on it, we can perhaps detect one more characteristic which art must have, if it is to forego both entertainment value and magical value, and draw a subject matter from its audience themselves. It must be prophetic. The artist must prophesy not in the sense that he foretells things to come, but in the sense that he tells his audience, at the risk of their displeasure, the secrets of their own hearts. His business as an artist is to speak out, to make a clean breast. And what he has to utter is not, as the individualistic theory of art would have us think, his own secrets. As spokesman of his community, the secrets he must utter are theirs. The reason why they need him is that no community altogether knows its own heart. And by failing in this knowledge, a community deceives itself on the one subject concerning which ignorance means death. For the evils which come from that ignorance, the poet as prophet suggests no remedy, because he has already given one. The remedy is the poem itself. Art is the community's medicine for the worst disease of mind, the corruption of consciousness. So those are the final words of the book. And when I first read them, I just thought they were just brilliant.
Yeah, wonderful stuff.
And a lot in there that's applicable to, like I said, not just Joker, but films like it. Not amusing, it's not making this explicit political message for you to then go out in the streets and rally about. No, it's not presenting any solutions, not presenting any grand causes. It's just this thing in itself that through the making of it and the viewing of it, that interaction between the artist and the audience, it expresses certain emotions about things. It's hard to put into words because, like Collingwood says in the book, if you could put it into words, you wouldn't make art about it. Art is for the purpose of expressing something that cannot be put into words. If it could be put into words, you wouldn't need to write the poem. Like the poem gets at the heart of something in a way that just saying it can't. And that's why, like, art can never just be propaganda. It can never just be for rallying people to a political cause. It can never just be for entertainment, because none of those things actually get deep enough